Look at your hand. Under that skin, inside most of your cells, is a record of encounters that happened tens of thousands of years before you were born. You probably think your DNA belongs to one species, Homo sapiens, us. But that is not the full story, because your genome is not a clean family tree. It is an archaeological site. And buried inside it may be pieces of humans who were never quite us, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and possibly other populations we have not even identified yet. They disappeared as separate groups, but some of them never completely left. In 2010, scientists published a draft of the Neanderthal genome. For the first time, researchers could compare Neanderthal DNA with the DNA of living humans, and the result was awkward for the old textbook version of human evolution. People with ancestry outside Africa carried stretches of DNA that matched Neanderthals. Not vaguely, not symbolically, genetically. The ancestors of modern humans had met Neanderthals, and they did considerably more than exchange hunting tips. They had children. Today, many people with recent ancestry outside Africa carry roughly 2 to 3% Neanderthal ancestry. That sounds tiny. Until you remember that 2% of a genome is still tens of millions of DNA letters, and different people carry different fragments. So across humanity, a much larger portion of the Neanderthal genome survives, scattered through millions of living bodies like pages from a book that was torn apart and distributed around the world. But here is where it gets even stranger. Neanderthals were not the only other humans we met. In 2008, archaeologists working in Denisova Cave in Siberia found a tiny finger bone. It belonged to a young girl. The bone did not look like the beginning of a scientific revolution. It looked like something you could lose inside a matchbox. But its DNA revealed a human population that science had not known existed. The Denisovans. We still have only a small number of physical remains connected to them, yet their genetic legacy survives in living populations, especially in parts of Asia and Oceania. Think about that. An entire human group was discovered not through a complete skeleton, a skull, or an ancient city. It was discovered through a fragment of bone, and the genetic echoes still carried by people today. Then, scientists found another bone fragment in the same cave. This one belonged to a teenage girl known as Denisova 11. Her mother was Neanderthal. Her father was Denisovan, a first-generation child of two human populations that had been separated for hundreds of thousands of years. That discovery changed the picture completely. The ancient world was not filled with isolated human species politely staying on separate branches of a diagram. They moved, they met, they competed, and sometimes, very clearly, they formed families. Now, when DNA moves from one population into another through interbreeding, geneticists call it introgression, which is a very technical word for something extremely human. People met, they had children, those children had children. And eventually, pieces of DNA from one population became part of another. Most of those inherited fragments disappeared over time. Some may have been harmful inside a Homo sapiens genetic background. Some were probably neutral, but others appear to have been useful. Neanderthal-derived variants have been connected to skin and hair biology, as well as certain disease risks. That does not mean Neanderthal DNA controls your personality. It does not explain why you hate mornings. And it definitely does not give your uncle permission to behave like a caveman at dinner. Genetics is more complicated than that. Most traits are influenced by many genes, the environment, and a truly unreasonable number of interactions between them. But some archaic DNA did affect survival. One of the clearest examples comes from the Tibetan Plateau. Living thousands of meters above sea level means surviving with much less oxygen. Many Tibetans carry a version of a gene called EPAS1 that helps the body function in that environment. The remarkable part is where that genetic variant appears to have come from, Denisovans, or a population closely related to them. A genetic inheritance from an extinct human group may have helped modern humans survive on the roof of the world. That is not a decorative trace from prehistory. That is ancient DNA still doing a job. And the exchange went both ways. Genetic evidence shows that some early Homo sapiens populations also contributed DNA to Neanderthals. This was not a simple story in which modern humans arrived, replaced everyone, and continued alone. It was messier, more intimate, more human. The human family tree is not really a tree. It is closer to a braided river. Populations split apart, traveled through different environments, and changed over thousands of generations. And then, sometimes, they flowed back together. So what happened to the other humans? As separate populations, Neanderthals and Denisovans disappeared. Why that happened is still debated. Small populations, environmental changes, competition, disease, and absorption into larger Homo sapiens populations may all have played a role. But extinction is not always a clean erasure. Sometimes a population vanishes from the landscape while fragments of its history continue inside the descendants of the people it once met. Which brings us back to your hand. The cells beneath that skin do not contain a pure, untouched record of one human species marching alone through history. They contain a mosaic, a biological archive assembled from migrations, encounters, survival, and relationships that happened in a world shared by several kinds of human. The other humans are gone. Their voices are gone. Their communities, languages, and names are gone, but not every part of them disappeared. Some fragments survived the only way DNA can survive, by being passed from parent to child, again and again, until tens of thousands of years later, they reached you. So the next time you hear that Neanderthals and Denisovans went extinct, remember this. They vanished as separate peoples. But in the most literal biological sense, some of them are still in us. And maybe the real question is not whether they were human. Maybe it is how many different humans it took to create us.